Hello and welcome to an Infinity the Game battle report. Today we're playing Next Wave versus Tohaa and the scenario is Hardlock. Now, Next Wave are a faction that I have been playing and struggling with since their release. And when I say struggling, I don't mean that this is a faction that struggles to find cool and interesting profiles to put in lists. Absolutely the opposite. The top end of Next Wave is enormously compelling and interesting, and I want so much more of it than I can actually put in a list. Next Wave is a faction that really demands compromises and focuses in list building. And while I have a bunch of personal frustrations with the design, ultimately those are mostly just fetches, and the cool things in this faction are very cool. This list that's on screen now represents the most current version of a Next Wave list I have been tinkering with for a little while now, and it's built around a couple of core concepts. The first of those core concepts is that dinosaurs are cool and I want to include lots of them in a list, but underlying that is, yes, this could be a list that was running Achilles and a Skyhound and then just stretched itself thin to provide the limited amount of supporting infrastructure necessary to give those models orders, and that would probably be a very powerful list, but it isn't the kind of list that I personally like to play. When you concentrate to that effect, right? When all of the teeth in your list are Achilles, Patroclus, and a Skyhound. Maybe you squeeze in one marksman rifle or something. You end up with a list that's got very powerful forward gears, but your opponent does not technically have to kill many things in order to neuter your ability to progress the scenario. Achilles lists and Skyhound lists to a lesser extent, the Skyhound is relatively aggressively costed, have big points of vulnerability that then you just have to play around keeping those models safe, keeping them defended, keeping them insulated, repairing them if they get, for example, isolated, and then washing your orders back through them when the turn begins again. And they're very strong. Like Achilles is unapologetically a very powerful piece, but I like to play with redundancy. I like the knowledge that I can lose one or two pieces, like pick any two pieces in my list, I could potentially lose those, and the list can carry on. I like that just as a baseline kind of capability to include because I'm just used to catastrophe materializing and I play against plenty of people who are very good at picking out something that you love and making sure that that piece in particular dies. And so with those two basic concepts, right? Number one, dinosaurs cool, and number two, can I build a diversified and redundant next wave list? Yes, what do I have to sacrifice? This is the list that I've played for a few games now, and I think I really like. So from the top, we're starting with a 9-6 split, but some NCO and tactical awareness will get us to reasonable order counts in both pools. We've got Patroclus and a Steeljaw. Patroclus is one of two Fire Team Masters in this list, so this Steeljaw will be regular. And this is a pure duo. That means Patroclus is a kind of serviceable gunfighter. I wouldn't say fantastic. Ballistic skill 13, throwing 4 dice is fine. The HRL's ammunition type being a template weapon does really help. But ultimately, Patroclus is a fire team in a can all by himself. He's a specialist, he has smoke. He can take gunfights of opportunity. The Steeljaw really is just a way of getting him that +1 special die, and the Steeljaw is cool. It's a dinosaur, it is robust. For 18 points, you're getting a model that is not bad at close assault and has some utility, but is mostly just very hard to kill. And it has a key benefit of not being hackable, which is very important because Patroclus is a HI and is hackable. Patroclus is also, for some reason, a model that relies on no wound incapacitation but is not shock immune. Lad has a lot of vulnerabilities baked into him, but ultimately 31 points by the standards of this faction is not unreasonable, and he is literally the only source of regular smoke in the entire army. And if it's at all possible, I refuse to play without at least some visibility control, so into the list he goes. We've then got a 3-person Harris team. This is a research team. Pandora is our second fire team master. Again, just the one model she'll be turning regular, a Blackheart. She's in a team with a Stinger and a Blackheart. I've gone with the Medikit +1 burst profile. There's a bunch of models in this list. In fact, almost everything in this list, except for a couple of remotes, including the puzzlers you'll see in Group 2, can be recovered with that Medikit and often have reasonable fizz. Basically, we are running, especially we're running enough Black Hearts that it's well worth having the couple of extra points spent on the Medikit, and she's good generally. Now, she's the only hacker in this list, and that's the product of a little bit of experimentation. One of the things I have found about Next Wave is that they have made a liar of me in respect to one of the things I said in the Next Wave first impressions video, which was that they looked like they were going to have really good kind of entry-level hacking. And I made that assessment based on the fact that I could see that they had Bit and Kiss in the army and they had access to Pandora. Unfortunately, Next Wave only has access to the trash bag, basically unplayable Bit and Kiss profile, which means that actually you don't have access, like easy access to a good KHD. You're trying to find borderline pre-buff Pan-Oceanian level killer hackers. And that has left Next Wave in a position where they are actually a worse hacking faction than almost every Pan-Oceanian faction. Now, post October 2024, that's not actually the worst thing to be. This has been the year of the Pan-Oceanian equal attention cake. But broadly, I am forming the opinion that I want to be very modest in my hacking investment in Next Wave. And Pandora represents basically a good flaw, where she is personally very difficult to kill, thanks to Zero Pain. She is personally like just annoying enough. She can do all of the regular hacking programs, which means that your repeaters are live, and that's it. That will do. You can squeeze a KHD in there. My preferred KHD is the Cliff Jumper, which is the drop troop. A little bit of awkwardness, you have to bring it on before you lay any repeaters. But otherwise, the piece that I'm specifically avoiding adding is a gearhead. And the reason for that is after a few games, what I did find is I liked the fact that the gearhead was a second pitcher. There is some really interesting synergies with other models in this list and the ability to throw out pitchers. But what I found was basically became very easy for your opponent to just face check your pitches with a decent quality killer hacker. And Pandora can kind of no-sell that killer hacker for a while, right? She's very hard to bring down if you stack a firewall bonus with Zero Pain and the fact that she's got no wound incapacitation. It can be challenging even for a very good quality KHD to kill her efficiently. But while she's standing there using Zero Pain, the gearhead can't do that. And it can't stack its existing firewall with the firewall from the repeater, and so the gearhead tended to just die a lot while Pandora refused to help. And so for that reason, I want my repeaters to be live, but I don't want my army to be killer hacking fodder, and Pandora therefore is like the limited possible investment to get me useful repeaters while also doing other things, while also freeing up points, etc. I think Gearhead's one of the best regiments in the entire army, but for this particular list, the Gearhead hacker that I had previously been including wasn't correct. Now, Stingers and Blackhearts. Stingers are pretty excellent. They are a single wound piece. That's the only downside. In all other respects, cool. This is a great set of skills. Ballistic skill attack -3, mimetism -3. Warhorse and NCO. That's a fantastic set of abilities. 30 points for a single wound model is expensive, but I am broadly willing to pay for it for at least one model because a single NCO in a list that otherwise doesn't spend its LT order is good. In terms of the Stinger profiles that I like, back and forth between the heavy machine gun and the marksman rifle. The marksman rifle has an MSV2, and this list does have the smoke to lay down to get access to smoke shooting with the MSV2 marksman rifle. The problem is it is a multi-marksman rifle, and damage 7 kind of sucks. So I don't yet have an opinion about which of those I prefer. Currently, I'm running with the Stinger heavy machine gun, mostly on the basis that Patrocles is only a single source of smoke, and I can't afford to dedicate him to giving bonuses to a Stinger MSV2. So we're just using the heavy machine gun, we are rolling more dice, we're stacking just the mods that the Stinger has. It's a good piece, and it contributes the research fire team keyword to Pandora. Cool. Pandora, the last one of those, the last piece in that Harry's team then is a Blackheart, and this is the first of 3 Blackhearts in the list, and these guys really are the core of this list. This one is the cheapest profile, the 25.1. The other 2 are 27.1s, where they exchange contenders for plasma carbines. So we've got a contender, a Panzerfaust, an Emorat, and a Mine Dispenser Viral, and an AP Heavy Pistol. All of those things benefiting from just an absolute grab bag of skills, Mimetism 3, Ballistic Skill Attack +1 Burst, Immunity Critical, multiple wounds, etc. Blackhearts are really good. Basically, every Blackheart is good at every range band from point blank all the way out to 32. And because they're all packing mine dispensers, and this is a list with ample baggage, you also get to just spew material out into the midfield. And that's where we get to that synergy that I mentioned. One of the things I really like about this list is that viral mines are actually kind of terrifying. The worst case scenario is that they're a shock mine that targets BTS against something with structure, but 2 saving throws in all other respects, like it's very difficult to just go, yeah, she'll be right. You have to respect viral mines a lot. And viral mines combine really nicely with pitches because anything that has structure, like there are only a small number of models in the game that have structure and which aren't hackable. And that means you can just build these layered defenses where, as long as Pandora is alive, kind of everything is just a little bit annoying to deal with. You get this really cool material defense that you throw out at relatively low opportunity cost and which can have a lot of upside. The other thing to note basically about all of the Black Hearts, in addition just to the fact that they're big gun bullies, right? Fantastic ammunition, tons of shots, great at all ranges, difficult to put down, etc., is these Black Hearts are actually my long-range firepower solution as well. And the reason for that is that all three of the Black Hearts in this list are linked and get link bonuses, which means that although it's single shot, that Panzerfaust is actually kind of terrifying in active turn. You are getting 2 shots plus 1 special die, because Black Hearts have got physical attack plus 1 burst, and they're all in links, and that's just the equivalent of a tank hunter shot. Now, you have to reload in between shots, but I have 3 Black Hearts. I'll just fire all of the Panzerfaust off before I try reloading everything. And that gives me the option of actually having some really, really dangerous active and reactive turn firepower that refreshes itself basically every single round. Those Panzerfausts are some serious secret sauce, and they give some very serious long-range firepower in addition to everything else the Black Hearts are doing. The rest of this group is basically just chaff, etc. We've got an R-drone and then 2 Harbingers. I would love to take a productive lieutenant, but we've got an NCO, so the Harbingers will have to do. We then have a Sacha. This list is low on specialists. It is built as a generalist list, and so the Sacha is very necessary for things like Hardlock, where you cannot go into the late game without specialists. That puts this list, or this combat group rather, at 8 regular orders and 1 irregular once you account for the fire team masters, but it has NCO, so this is effectively a 10 order group. And the most order-hungry pieces, that will usually be Patroclus and the Steeljaw, are fast enough to make good use of that. Group 2 is then a second 3-person fire team. And this is probably the weirdest thing about the list. This is a non-fire team master Black Heart fire team consisting of 2 Black Hearts and an M-drone. Technically, I think this is a control fire team. That's the one that looks like you're meant to put Unidrones in it, but that can have an M-drone. And this team has been doing consistent work and is really interesting. So the first thing is we've got 2 Black Hearts, awesome. Black Hearts are excellent, and these are Plasma Black Hearts. Now, yes, that says Plasma Carbine, but those guys with the Link team are rolling 4 Plasma dice with Mimetism, with Ballistic Skill 14. That just slaps shit up. If you aren't in range to fire the Plasma Carbine, you fire off the Panzerfaust, and because you've got 2 Black Hearts, you can take 2 face-to-face rolls with those Panzerfaust before you need to reload. Now, the utility of the M-drone, there are a few things that it's doing there. First is it's a specialist and it's sensor. This kind of remote, like if you're a Pan-Oceanian player and you can wildcard Pathfinders with TAC-aware into your fire teams, you should probably just be doing that. Like Neoterra is incredible for a host of reasons, but one of those reasons is that you have 2 Pathfinders that you can slap into lists. But it's particularly useful with the Black Hearts, not just because it's a specialist, but because there's a kind of weird synergy with the tactical awareness, which is that usually I am going to be converting 1 irregular order from the Black Hearts per round just to help fuel them. But I will actually spend, usually as the last action of the turn, I will spend one of the Black Hearts irregular orders just to fire off viral mines. And that's totally fine. The Black Heart won't get the +1 special die from the Link team when it's firing those mines, but it's usually landing them on 16s, and it will join the fire team at the end of the round, no problem. It will just rejoin having left if it wasn't itself the link leader, because in that case, spending the irregular would break the fire team. And having the M-drone to provide the tactical awareness, to just always be like, okay, cool, we're just repositioning here, and the M-drone is becoming the leader, means that I have that really easy way, like I've quarantined an order to switch the fire team leadership over to the M-drone, so that the second Blackheart can spend its irregular order, leave the team, fire off mines, and then rejoin the team in the states phase. That's just been weirdly valuable. The team is also mobile, it moves forward, it moves back very easily, they're all 6-4 movement, they make a lot of very efficient use of all the models in this combat, or like the orders in this combat group. And like, look, worst case scenario, if one of these pieces dies, I'll just run forward and attack with the Blackhearts. They will always spend their irregulars usefully because they've got the mine dispensers, etc. So this has worked very, very well. It's great at cluttering up the midfield with material. It's great at long-range gunfighting for a couple of orders per turn. It's great at short-range gunfighting or medium-range gunfighting with the plasma carbines. It's fast enough to get close, and it can even do like a nasty fork on a tag because no tag really wants to wear a burst 2 Emerat. Anyway, rounding out this group, we've then got 2 Ichadrons, one must have Icadrons in Next Wave, not least because they're one of the few sources of cheap-ish orders that you have. But by God, does this list need baggage? It has 3 Mind Dispensers and a pitcher. And then we have the, in my opinion, very close to auto-include Gearhead Cyberplug. This one has 2 puzzlers. Now, I like all of the Sartroids. I like basically every profile of the Ranters, and I like the Puzzlers. Puzzlers, I will usually take the hidden deployment ones. In this case, I'm taking 2 Puzzlers. And that is because, frankly, I think the Puzzler 12-point hidden deployment model is the best profile in Next Wave. This model is the closest I have found to recapturing the goblin magic of the N3 Libertos. Not since the N3 Libertos has there been a model that is so capable of just randomly ruining your opponent's day as a puzzler. I've had so many games now where one of them appears in ARO, pops out the Emerat, is very annoying, bricks something with the Emerat, and usually it's something that your opponent will be going after, like a midfield objective, and so they're like, I have to just press the button and cop this. And then it starts dodging, and it moves 4 inches per dodge, and it just gets into a position where your opponent is trying to shoot it, and it's dodging on 13s, and it has mimetism, and then it gets somewhere else. And then there's a puzzler with an Emerat staring at a tag, clipping multiple other things in the template weapon. And it's just, they're just wonderful. They just fulfill every fantasy I have about games, particularly like any war game, but especially Infinity, which is that if I can make a cheap little shitter overperform, I am happy. And I have not yet found a piece that is sometimes capable of toilet bowling an entire opponent's turn as much as the puzzler. And we have 2 of them, which significantly increases the chances of that happening. I love them very much, and they are a significant part of how this list functions. So overall, this list is doing the thing that I like, which is that it's got multiple redundant pieces, and there's really no one piece that you can kill that cripples it properly. In fact, you could probably kill any 3 pieces in this list, even if you picked with like maximum judiciousness, there would still be options that this list has to progress the scenario, to progress an offensive, and to keep pushing forward. And it's pushing forward off the back of the power of pieces like Blackhearts, which again, they're not ballistic skill 15, but they throw plenty of dice with very dangerous ammunition types, and they have mimetism. So it all kind of has hung together well, and I have liked this list a lot. Playing against me this evening is my Tohaa playing friend Ed, testing out a Tohaa list with an eye towards a satellite event taking place at the end of January, which is CanCon. Biggest event of the year, tied with like maybe one other, and with a pretty challenging 5-round, 5 new scenarios, a lot of the new stuff from ITS 17, and Ed's going to try and make Tohaa work there. And so from top to bottom, he's running a 6-9 split. The smaller combat group is a Libertos Mine Layer, Diplomatic Delegate, an Unlinked McCall, a Chaxa, a Greif Operator, and a Clipsos. There are a number of things in here that I like, but this is kind of doing the stuff that I like a Group 2 to be able to do. Particularly in Tohaa, I like Group 2 to be able to generate smoke if it needs to, because Tohaa are not an order-efficient faction. They tend to run a lot of 4-4 movement models, and they tend to have very few additional orders that they can generate. Usually Tohaa are 15 and that's it, maybe your LT order if you're lucky. And so having a ability to lay down smoke with Combat Group 2 often directly results in you saving orders in Combat Group 1. I am almost going back to Attack Wheel Lieutenant just for the smoke. Ed here is running the discount option. It's a 14-point McCall, it throws smoke, job done. Otherwise, in Group 2, you just want productive order outlets, and hey, the Libertos, hey, the Delegate, fantastic, 2 irregulars that can do different things. Chaxa, Greif Operator, wouldn't be Ed if it wasn't taking a Greif Operator, and then Eclipsos, this is definitely a, you really want pieces like this in Hardlock, and when we get to smaller group, but Group 2 in this case, we'll actually see another piece that could almost just become a second Clipsos because they are that valuable in this scenario. In the smaller group, we have a Sukwheel and Takwheel chain of command. This will be a duo. In one duo, you get Big Gun and Specialist and Smoke. Excellent, love that. Takwheel does not have terribly much baggage. It's going to have the Chaxa dedicated to it. In this game, I don't think it's going to fire off any end games at all. It will mostly be valuable as a chain of command specialist with Mirror Ball. All of those things are good. We then have a Sukwheel Forward Observer duoed with a Kriegel. Very similar, admittedly more budget than the previous fire team, but the Sukwheel itself is a specialist. The K1 Combi is a serviceable gun if you get it inside good range against the right target, at which point it's totally fine. And then the Kriegel is providing defensive ferroware and Smoke, and this is again a pure duo. I quite like this as a team, I quite like this as a team. These are very efficient little duos. Ed's making good use of them here. We've then got a Sukhoi K1 Sniper with 2 Kael'tars. Now, I would say you could almost get away without Chain of Command on this Kael'tar, because to enter Loss of Lieutenant with this list, you would have to lose both the Sukhoi FO and the Tac Wheel, but since those are both going into danger, I don't begrudge Ed spending the extra 6 points on a little bit of insurance here. We then have an Egao and a Motorized Bounty Hunter. The Bounty Hunter makes a lot of sense. It's a very fast, order-efficient offensive piece. Tohaa otherwise kind of lack those. The Egao is a little bit experimental, and by the conclusion of this scenario, Ed and I both kind of agreed that if he were tailoring just for Hardlock, it should be a second Clipsos. Clipsos are just incredibly valuable in this scenario. They can just win the game for you, whereas the Egao is a bit more of an adaptation to some previous games Ed and I have played, where a concern that he has is if he has to play this list in a different scenario, for example, crossing lines, he's worried about having the hard removal that he might need to kill something like, say, a Swiss Guard or a cutter or something like that bombs into his zone. Because one of the things that taking a bunch of Sukhois as your firepower pieces can struggle with is Ballistic Skill 15, Mimetism 6. And the Egao, at least a Swiss Guard, the Egao can absolutely put a Swiss Guard down. Now, like I said, I do like Egao. I'm not convinced by that. It's something to test, however. We are still, technically speaking, we're about 6 weeks, 7 weeks out from CanCon, but given that Christmas occurs in those times, it's time to start testing and practicing games. And so Ed is getting some of the dojo out of the way just to see if it works beforehand. Overall, I think this is a very sound list. It is built with this particular scenario and a couple of other CanCon scenarios in mind. There are things that I would change. For example, I expect to see a Dral in Ed's second list. That's a piece he also makes very good use of. But starting with something like this is perfectly fine if you're looking at Tohaa. Now, 20 minutes of me talking about dinosaurs and artichokes now done with, let's actually talk about this game that we played. The first thing that we'll note about this game, and look really important overall just in assessing the quality of the players here, is that Ed makes a testing decision as the very first thing that he does, which is that he wins the lieutenant role and says, I want to go first. That is objectively the incorrect decision in Hardlock, unless you're playing into very specific matchups or against an alpha strike that you're absolutely terrified of. Hardlock is just brutally powerful for the second player. It is just default second player win. The first player has to overcome an inherent disadvantage. However, you do not learn how to overcome that inherent disadvantage without playing it. And so Ed looks me in the eye and says, I know this is a bad idea. I'm going to go first. And, credit to him, this list has a plan for how it might win the game under that circumstance. And so what it's doing is it's going for a very aggressive turn 1 beacon capture, because even though the beacon is not actually hugely valuable, those are still 3 points that you would not otherwise get and which you kind of need to equalize the scenario if you're going first. So in terms of deployment, up here on this rooftop we have Ed's K1 Sukhoi sniper team. The K1 sniper has just barely a line bisecting the table. You can probably just see it past this sign, sort of coming down to that direction, which will pin me into my deployment zone a little bit, but then it also has eyes on this approach up this street. Ed knows I'm unlikely to move anything up through the car crashes along this street because there's just not a lot of scenario interest there. The nearest objective would be this here behind this building, but still closing off that angle, good to do. We've then got the Sukhoi K1 Forward Observer Lieutenant with the Kriegel agent up here, ready to move out and around towards that objective. Ed is covering them with the sniper, so they're relatively safely positioned there, able to move out and around if they need to. The Diplomatic Delegate is on this rooftop here, guarding the beacon in Ed's deployment zone. The Motorized Bounty Hunter is deployed behind this sign, ready to impetuous out and around. The Libertos is securing the position here. The Libertos itself is on the roof, and the mine is on ground level covering the objective. The Egao is on this rooftop as far forward as it can go. There's a doorway here that you can probably just see that the Egao can peek down and move out and around if it needs. And then we've got the baggage traxer back here, and the Sukhoi heavy machine gun and tac wheel officer basically in this space, ready to move up through the forest towards this objective. Now for my part, oh by the way, reserve drop, Greif operator here, and the McCall is at ground level, I believe, behind this building. It will impetuous out and around during the course of the turn. The Greif operator is the reserve drop, but is going to be very important. It deploys a micromillimeter away from my beacon. For my part, I am cautious of the firepower that the Sukhoi heavy machine gun presents, but I do have to provide some AROs, and so we are mostly using Blackheart since they're fairly resilient. Now we've got from like top to bottom a smattering of harbingers, order plebs, etc. One harbinger is on this rooftop here, the other is nestled down behind this building under good cover. This one is the LT. The baggage bots are scattered around, one here, around the Blackhearts. The big pieces are Patroclus and his Steeljaw are here. Patroclus is behind this planter bed. The Steeljaw is a fair way up. Uh, Pandora and her fire team are nestled way back. Pandora is prone and the Stinger is prone, but the Blackheart is standing. And the Blackheart standing gives it a line. Basically, it's covering the beacon completely, and it could take a shot at anything that was crossing this direction, although something would have to move a fair way forward to engage it. We've then also got, now this Blackheart here is prone, the M-drone is on the rooftop forming the link team. The other Blackheart is down here, not quite visible in frame, and it is watching up the center of the battlefield. In particular, it is thoroughly covering the objective, which is a sacrifice that the Greif operator basically decides that it has to make when it drops down there. Finally, my reserve drop is a Cyberplug gearhead. He deploys somewhere that doesn't particularly matter, and of course when he deploys, he hidden deploys 2 puzzlers. Now, my initial temptation was to try and put them in positions where I had all 3 objectives covered, but I came to the conclusion that it was basically not correct to try and defend this one. And the reason for that, or not try and defend it at close range, and the reason for that is that the close range defense of the puzzler is an Emerat, and an Emerat is useless against the Sukhoi over here that would be moving forward to press the button. It's a warhorse, I cannot isolate it, it's not heavy infantry, and so instead what I did is I deployed both of my puzzlers heavily concentrated in this position. The first one deployed behind these trees, the second one deployed behind the corner of this building, and in that way I had both of these objectives thoroughly covered, and potentially acrylat cannon firepower in this direction, although I will admit, when I placed them I kind of forgot that they had acrylat cannons and would never fire one the entire game. Still, remember that they have those, it is a useful piece of kit in the toolbox. Now, Ed knows that there are puzzlers about, but he has to put his plan into motion in any case. And his plan is get the beacon. And so we have the Sukhoi, firstly the biker and the McCall will impetuous forward for some extra orders, and then the Sukhoi HMG and tack wheel officer will begin moving up and around in this direction. They're making a beeline toward the objective. They can get to it without being seen until something reveals from hidden deployment. And as they move through this space here, the first puzzler, this one here, will drop out of hidden deployment and fire off the Emerat. Now, Ed elects not to dodge, because he has no real other guns in place unless the Igao stood up and it would have things watching it to put the puzzler down, so he just shoots and kills the puzzler with the tack wheel officer is active for that order because it's running towards the objective. And while the puzzler does get put down, I do consume the Symbiomate on the Sukhoi HMG. Even though the Sukhoi has Warhorse, the Symbiomate is still forced to be triggered, and the tack wheel gets isolated. Not the end of the world. Speedball gets called down, the tack wheel gets de-isolated, and then the tack wheel moves forward onto the objective, at which point the second puzzler reveals and Emerats it again. And what that means is that Ed has basically one chance to press the button. He cannot afford not to press the button. And so Emerat goes down, tack wheel gets isolated a second time, but one shot on 14s and the button gets pressed, which means that the Greif operator can start making the exfiltration. Now, the Greif operator is not going to survive here. The Greif operator's goal is to move 4 inches in this direction, pick up the beacon, die, and then place the beacon, like when with its death, drop the beacon, to get the beacon just far enough back that then the McCall can throw a bunch of smoke. The biker can use the remaining Group 2 orders to get the beacon and get back, hand the beacon off to the McCall, which then uses its orders to run back in this direction and drop prone behind this planter bed, which gets the beacon under Ed's control, basically back to his deployment zone. That was all pretty cleanly executed. He did have some plans to take some gunfighting, but then 2 puzzlers turned up and that was just not an option. The puzzlers have meant that this situation over here around this big building is nasty for Ed, but he has the beacon. That's his first, this is something, it isn't even exactly a win condition, it's a don't lose condition, but cool. He's got the puzzle, he's got the thing, got the beacon, and all it cost was 1 Symbiomate, 1 isolated tack wheel, and a dead Greif operator and several targeted things and stuff in bad positions, which is why this scenario sucks for the first player, but Ed is now on a path where this scenario can be equalized. He is at this point relying on a lot of like Tohaa resilience, and to an extent some of his own cheeky hidden things, to try and stay in the game long enough that the points he can tick up from holding this beacon matters and swings it for him. So turn passes to me, and I have kind of an equally complicated turn because I need to at least kill this McCall. That's kind of very important, right? That's priority number one in terms of keeping the points from beginning to spread in Ed's direction so that I can win the game by pressing buttons at the end of the game. To do that, we need to kill a McCall. Kind of easier said than done because there's an awful lot of bubble wrap, and we have to start by trying to put down this Suquale over here. Now, I have a bunch of guns that could theoretically do that, but the best for them to begin with is the Stinger, because the Stinger is rolling 5 dice to the Suquale's 2. They're both shooting on 10s, but most importantly, I have the best chance of winning that face-to-face roll and using up the Symbiomate so that then I can start loading up with Panzerfaust. I don't want to fire the Panzerfaust against the Suquale early, because wasting those just to consume a Symbiomate feels pretty bad. So the Stinger stands up, takes the shot, and I think after maybe 2 face-to-face rolls, the Suquale sits down. Ed actually, as soon as the Symbiomate is consumed, Ed recognizes the threat of the Panzerfaust and goes, I don't want to lose this piece, and if I have to take more face-to-face rolls, I'm going to have to start taking 3 saves per face-to-face roll, so it gets out of there, and that frees me up to begin moving forward. We've got 2 lines of offense along this turn, and they're basically going to interchange orders. The first is this team with the black hearts, aka team I will cause problems on purpose, which moves out and around in this direction, out and around here, and puts firepower into a bunch of different pieces. They are going to get a nice clean kill, I think with a plasma carbine on the biker, and then they're going to try and take down the tack wheel, but it will win its face-to-face roll. It will drop down mirror ball smoke, and okay, cool, that's it, I can't deal with that anymore. So we basically just lay a bunch of mines and pull back. Over the course of the turn, the only other thing that happens with this group, and actually this might have been an arrow before, is that a repeater gets placed down here by this puzzler that will cover all of this space, and it will be very relevant. There are going to be a bunch of targeted and stuff going down, and in fact, yeah, we can see targeted on this biker, which means that the biker was targeted in a previous turn, which means I got the beacon down as an arrow, I think against the Greif, actually. So all of that work just to kill a biker and lay some mines is maybe not fantastic, but sometimes the model wins a smoke throw against you, and the mines are certainly going to matter, and it's with Pandora's team that we continue the push otherwise. And what we're able to do, just thanks to being Silhouette 5, is that the Blackheart in that group is going to be able to just get up into a position where it can fire off its contender against the McCall. And this is going to be another one of those ones where it's like, well, I sure hope he doesn't crit this smoke throw, and actually he doesn't. I put the McCall down with a volley of contender fire, and that is an important kill. Now, as we're doing this, we actually close to a position where we can see, not quite within, actually, I think we even get within 8 of, no, don't get within 8 of, we get within like 9 inches of the Libertos on this rooftop, but Blackhearts have got +3 to their Discover roll, and so the Libertos chooses not to reveal, no problem. At that point, I will discover it with a subsequent order, and we're going to eventually put it dogged as well, and then basically just run back away. That's not a ton of kills, all things considered, right? Like, all of these are relatively low value, but killing the McCall stops Ed from going up 1 scenario point for controlling the beacon at the end of the round, and ultimately all I've lost so far is a puzzler. So Ed is definitely hemorrhaging on the attrition front, his symbiomates are gone, models are isolated, and while he's only so far losing very cheap models, apart from the Greif, he is down 4 pieces, and I'm down none of my actual troopers. Now, I actually got to take a photo here, so what we can see here is the end of Ed's second turn, but the important thing to note is that he's not accomplished a great deal. He actually played this very nicely. Basically, the only thing that he absolutely had to do to progress the scenario was to get the diplomatic delegate, grab the beacon, and then run back up onto this rooftop, which he has. Cool. Now the delegate is securing the beacon. She is relatively safe. She's got her own aura of Ferroware. No problem. That means Ed has a bunch of orders spare for the Suquale to do some work. Now, the Suquale is being heavily bracketed. There are 3 Blackhearts, all of them are basically watching this rooftop. There's not an easy way for the Suquale to stand up comfortably, except, no problem, Ed's got oh, actually, sorry, one thing we missed at the end of my turn. There is a Sasha over here who spec-fired a grenade, an EM grenade, onto this rooftop, needing 3s to hit, hit and isolated the Agao. Suck shit, Agao. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's not going to really stop the Agao this particular case, although the Agao would love to get into close combat and kill this puzzler. What the Agao is actually going to be doing is just laying mirror ball while the tack wheel defangs all of the mines that I laid in this area. It just makes its dodge, no problem. I think it took 1 mine hit earlier in the turn. I think I forked a mine hit with a plasma carbine. but it's 2 wounds BTS 6, you'll be fine. Now, the real tale of the tape with Ed's second turn is get down some mirror balls so that the Sukwale can fight things one at a time, and then the Sukwale will fight a Blackheart. It turns out Blackhearts are really hard to kill. In fact, Ed crit the Blackheart 3 times in 3 orders. I cancelled one of those crits with a counter crit because I am rolling 2 dice myself, but more importantly, the Blackheart is crit immune, and so we had all of these situations where it's like, oh, I'll take 2 saves, I'm fine. Oh, I'll take 1 save, I'll take 1 wound, we're fine. And so after a lot of orders invested, the Blackheart takes a wound, and that's basically it. Now, did it get lucky? Yeah, a little bit, but crit immune, armor 2, 2 wounds, always good range band weapons. That's a profile that it's very easy to get lucky with, or more particularly crit immune especially, makes it hard to get badly unlucky. So good job Blackheart justifying your existence in this list. Now there is one kind of critical thing that Ed mucked up, maybe 1.5 that Ed mucked up this turn. The first is that this tack wheel officer should have done some things before anything else. It did end up dodging the mine, but there was an order of operations, yes, it's isolated, etc., that let me do some things with this puzzler in reactive dodges that Ed maybe didn't want to. The more important thing is that the Sukwale over here didn't stand up, and it probably should have, because at this point, yes, I have Panzerfaust that I'm pointing at it, yes, there's a Stinger still there, etc., holding on to the beacon is very, very important. As it is still prone. In fact, basically everything of Ed's is prone, and I've managed to dodge into ARO with the tack wheel, dodge into CC with the tack wheel, and that dodge into CC with the tack wheel is very valuable, because it means the bugger can't Ferroware ARO, because Ferroware is a ballistic skill attack, and I'm in CC with it. And that gives me a lot of options. We're going to start by just yeeting Patroclus at the enemy DZ. Patroclus and his Steeljaw, they moved forward in a previous turn, and they are just going to run up straight towards the delegate, relying on stealth to get through the cordon of like Symbio bombs. There is a Symbio bomb on this Sukwale, for example, and so Ed kind of realizes he has to stop that. Patroclus gets onto the rooftop with the delegate is dead, there's nothing watching at her, and so as Patroclus moves forward and around, a Clipsos that Ed really wanted to keep hidden for a later turn reveals and shoots Patroclus. And I go, fill your boots, I'm not breaking stealth in zone of control of a Symbio bomb, and also there's a viral mine there, and the nano screen holds, and the Clipsos dies to the viral mine, and I basically I got a kill in my turn without firing a weapon. And forward we go. And that's rough for Ed. We are going to just send the Steeljaw backwards once we get close enough. The Steeljaw does bait out the Symbio bomb. I'm happy to see it gone. I get isolated. That kind of sucks. Not the end of the world. Because Patroclus gets onto this rooftop and into close combat with the delegate and kills her. Excellent. What I'd also really like to do is grab this beacon. And so to do that, we're going to move Team I Will Cause Problems on Purpose of Blackhearts and M-Drone out once again. They got tons of orders. I'm not spending orders on the puzzlers in this particular game, so they have full access to the entire order pool that they're in. And the goal here is to get onto this objective. As we do, Mirror Ball comes down. Yep, kind of expected that. I cannot kill any of the things around here. That's good old-fashioned Tohaa defenses. And we get the M-Drone up to this objective. If I can flip that one, firstly, that's a coup. Secondly, it will let Patroclus actually steal this objective. That would be fantastic, the beacon. So the M-Drone moves to try and press the button and fails. No problem. Tries again and fails. No problem. Tries again and fails. Okay, it's getting to be a problem now. Convert irregular order regular. Try again and fail. Now, it's really only like 1 in 80 to fail all of those, because this is only a Willpower 13 specialist, but I do not have any more orders to spend, like not realistically. The way that the combat group is set up, I would have to spend more command tokens than I want to. It all gets awkward. I'm just like, fine, you know what? Fate doesn't want it on this particular turn. That's 4 consecutive failures. We're going to do the irregular order, lay down some mines thing again as usual, and just pull the team back a little bit. And rather than stealing the button, which is what I wanted to do, Patroclus will just walk into base contact with the beacon. Now you can't, this is my understanding of the scenario, you cannot pick the beacon up without having pressed a button, but you can touch it, and you count as controlling a beacon if you're the only model with anything in base contact with it. So even though I don't have any buttons pressed, as long as Patroclus is just touching the beacon, not trying to pick it up, I'm still controlling it, which gets me 1 point. Currently, the score is sitting at, actually, I think it's 1-1. I think Ed has a single point from forward observing my HVT, and that is not the score you want things to be going first in Hardlock. And so this is a pretty grim spot for Ed, but he does, technically speaking, have a win condition. Unfortunately, that win condition is kill or suppress every specialist in my entire army, starting with Patroclus, and there's going to be a bunch of gunfighting and a bunch of shooting and a bunch of etc. And he will ultimately put Patroclus down, but that will be the only specialist that he kills. Actually, I think he kills the M drone as well. No, doesn't even get that because he wants to get the M drone. As the Sukhwheel finishes putting down Patroclus, it's going to come down to this building and then try and come out this doorway here. And as it's doing that, the puzzler will dodge into close combat with both of them. That is the point at which I took the photograph that is the thumbnail of this video. That's this little goblin here just being tremendously annoying in combat with two different Tohaa models, neither of which really wants to fight a Para CCW -6. And with the Sukhwhale engaged in CC, that kind of just stymies the remainder of Ed's options. Now, what he is going to do is he's going to bring... Oh, there are a bunch of mines and stuff all over the place. He will deal with those by dodging them with his Sukhwhale Lieutenant. And he's going to have to just bring the K1 Sniper around. It will jump down and jump onto this building, get into base contact with the beacon, and that's the bulk of what Ed can accomplish this turn. And pretty obviously that puts Ed in a fairly rough position going into the final turn. Now at this point, we actually started a little bit late, we're getting kicked out by the game store, but the rough order of operations is I spend one order and I finally press this button, and that immediately by itself just wins the scenario. From here, the options that we have are showboating. There's a little bit of gunfighting, there's a little bit of back and forth, I need to clear a few things off, I need to go after this Sukhwhale, potentially I want to try and get the Steeljaw into base contact with Ed's beacon. I want to move something up and around here to secure Ed's HVT. I think is up and over here somewhere. All of that ultimately, however, is kind of irrelevant because this is Hardlock. And when I finally press this button, I won the scenario. That was that. First order of the final turn, and from there it's just getting as many additional scenario points. I think technically it was kind of important to stop Ed from securing my beacon. That is actually, there are some points on the line for that, but it's probably only one. I'd have to go and check. Either way, all of that should be taken in the context of Ed won the damn lieutenant role and chose this because he needed the practice, and I salute the willingness to do that. That is how you get the reps in that ultimately carry you through events. For my part, I was very happy to get a game in that I could use as a battle report with this next wave list, and I hope particularly if you are a dinosaur aficionado and the idea of many dinosaurs, I think there are 6 in this list, 6 Silhouette 5 dinosaurs. If that tickles you, maybe this is a list that you can try out yourself. If you're curious as to what the models I am using for dinosaurs are, we don't have any close-ups in this particular case, but here is a quick random shot I took at a game, I think a week or two ago. Obviously the Steeljaw is pretending to be a Steeljaw. All of these other models are from the Horizon Zero Dawn board game. The quality is fine. You need a little bit of creative use to get them to the correct silhouette. These are all still work in process, which is why you can still see some white spots on the bases where I haven't put the crystals in. But they do fit the vibe of the army quite well, and I'm pretty happy with them. Anyway, that wraps up this battle report. Cool to feature Next Wave on the channel, beginning to get my thoughts together for presenting a faction focus for them, which is something that might or might not come out in the next couple of weeks. We'll see how the recording schedule goes. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a channel member either on YouTube or over on Buy Me a Coffee, or by making a donation via Buy Me a Coffee. Links are in the video description below. Big thanks to everyone who has supported the channel, past and present. Your support enables me to continue making these videos, and we do aim to put 1 or more videos out every week covering Infinity and other game systems. Hope very much that you've enjoyed this. Leave a like if you did, and we'll be back next week with more Infinity content.